We're live.
All right.
It's 4:59. 1 minute. We'll
Now we
start.
count off the minute.
So thank all of you for being ready for this. We're going to be playing this concert live, and we're not going to be able to answer to your comments, if there are any comments, on the many sites where this is being streamed to. So I hope it all works. We are, if you want the technical secrets, we're recording the music on each side separately. So later we mix it and it's going to sound better. So if you say, like, this sounds like it's mixed in cyberspace, what's going on? You know, the next version you get in a few days is going to sound better. So, but we're glad you're here live, and, you know, I'm so excited to be able to do this event together with the great Stephen Nachmanovitch, who is one of my idols and heroes for thinking about improvisation and making it into a whole life philosophy long before everyone was doing that, you know, which is what we have today. But he was a pioneer, and still people don't know what improvisation is. I think they don't take it the right way. We're going to take it the right way. Recently, Stephen has gotten more interested in something that I've been interested for a while, which is the songs of birds. Are they improvising? Are they composing? At least we can play with them, and we're going to play, and then we're going to talk a bit about this. So welcome, everybody.
It's great to be here with you, David. It's really a pleasure.
Well, all the bird sounds I played there were songs of starlings, which is not everyone's favorite songbird in America because they were introduced. People call them an invasive species, and people think they just make a lot of noise. But, you know, the great birdsong scientist Peter Marler, already in the 1950s, he said, the song of the starling, barely 1 minute in length, at the very limits of human comprehension. And I just read today that murmurations of starlings have been landing on Scottish power lines and upsetting the electrical grid because they dance on the wires. They come from the air. They interact with human technology and they mess it all up. So
Yeah,
if you hear any glitches here, this is what it is. The starlings are careening in and they're invading our electromagnetic space.
Well, glitches is the name of the game here because we're having the pleasure of playing together over the internet. And latency and glitches are part of the picture, and they're our friends. And we learn to respond to them the way that we learn to respond to other musicians.
So, Stephen, how is it you started playing with birds in the last year?
Oh, it just started this March when we had the lockdown for the COVID pandemic. I'd been deeply interested in biology and all of my life, and I'd been actually in 1966 I was making movies of protozoa gobbling each other up under the microscope at UCLA, and then by 1986 was having a retrospective of visual music pieces of my work at the UCLA Music Department, and I premiered the visual music version of the protozoa. And I've been involved with organisms forever, but I hadn't been especially involved with birds. And then this year, I had open heart surgery last year. I was split open like a baked potato, and fortunately I was all put back together okay. And I figured March was when I could start traveling and playing gigs again. And of course, that's when the COVID pandemic hit. So I'm fortunate enough to have a home, which many people don't. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to live in the woods here in Virginia and to take walks every day. And on the trail, I was confronted with huge amounts of birdsong, and I suddenly going, wait a minute, what is this that I've been ignoring for all these years? And I started recording them and bringing them back into the studio and monkeying with the sound and then setting violin tracks to them and trying to learn about what it's like to play with birds. Now, I had a piece on I produced this new album called Hermitage of Thrushes, which just came out a couple weeks ago. And there was a piece on there called Grandpa's Garage, which kind of low rumbling electric violin sounds, sort of subterranean with a lot of crows. And it didn't sound anything like my actual grandpa's garage. My grandpa, who was a retired bricklayer in Los Angeles, had a garage with 40 or 50 finches, canaries, parakeets, parrots for years, raised them and sold them. And when he was a young man in Russia in the early part of the 20th century, he raised those carrier pigeons that flew, across Siberia and back. And he was the real Birdman in the family. And it was really so interesting to suddenly realize that I was reconnecting with him through his work with birds. And of course, I became, I've known David for years and known that David has done extraordinary work with the music of birds and the music of other living organisms. I have other friends. I have a friend, Ron Fine, who's a wonderful composer in California, who just completed an album called Equatorial, which traces 100 species of birds across the equator all the way around the world. And, of course, there's Messiaen and all the incredible composers who've learned from birds and been inspired by birds. So it's been really, really interesting and wonderful to join this large company of composers who've played with birds.
Of course, there's so many species of birds out there that beyond the ones that we immediately hear and think of, and each one is like a world into itself, full of musical ideas that might give us something to think about. For example, the blue rock thrush.
Ah.
I cheated at the end. I added a sound that was not a bird.
What was it?
Well, that is supposed to be the sound of the dreaded fisher cat.
Ah.
In its original form, it's something like this,
Uh-huh.
like it's here it arrives, I think. It's too filtered there. Yeah, it's originally it's kind of like I can't even play it. It's supposed to be the most horrifying sound And on this recording, someone says, "What an awful sound!" But if you look into it, some people don't even think it exists. They think Fisher cats are completely silent. There's endless mythology about this. People say, "I've heard him make this sound," and then maybe it's not even the Fisher cat. Might even be a bird.
Mm. Well, I've been playing with the thrushes in my neighborhood. Not Dr. Seuss, the Sesame Street song. These are the insects in your neighborhood.
Really, there is a Sesame Street song like that?
Yes, there is.
Wow. This sort of insect.
That's right.
This is from China, though. A giant cicada. But there are cicadas around. We're not going to hear them.
Yeah, we won't get there. But I know
But
you've
the
gotten
thrushes,
there.
what's so special about the thrushes?
So, the interesting thing, here's the thrush at its normal pitch. And then you drop it in pitch. And that gets pretty interesting. And what's really interesting is, like when you play it at normal pitch, there's this little rasp at the end that you can barely hear because it's such high frequency. And then you drop it another octave. And it's a whole world unto itself. So that little rasp at the end now becomes like this whole sound world unto itself. So here are these creatures, they operate at what to us is a high pitch, and they have heartbeats. Songbirds approximately 450 beats per minute. We have about 80 beats per minute. So, of course, we can't speculate about the internal consciousness of the songbird, but it's possible that they think and hear far faster than we do, and that when we slow things down like this and make interesting and get them even down into the now we've got some sonar going.
Now, do you think they also use these intervals like we do? Like,
I certainly
is that by
hear
accident
them.
or design?
Well, the Pythagorean, the Western scale is Western. So the piano keyboard is purely a concoction of our culture with 12 equal tones per octave. But the Pythagorean intervals are built into the structure of the universe. They're in the orbitals of electrons going around the nucleus of an atom. They're in the orbitals of planets going around the sun. And they're present in all of nature. So that may be something that we share with birds, is an ability to connect to these Pythagorean ratios of one tone to another.
Let us hope.
Otherwise known as just intonation in human music.
One of the interesting things about being like locked down, trapped, nowhere to go, nowhere to travel to is I can play this giant contralto clarinet a lot because it's kind of difficult to take apart and carry around. But if it's just out all the time, then you just play it because it's a very centering activity to play that big low instrument, which I have to thank the great flutist and artist Michael Pestle for introducing to me.
It's a great instrument.
He said, this instrument is what really centers you.
And the great thing about improvisation is that the repertoire of all instruments is equal and infinite.
When did you first realize that?
Well, when I started traveling around giving improv workshops in music schools and conservatories and so forth, I discovered that I was having a lot of bassoonists show up and tubists and people who play instruments that require, the same kind of great skill and dedication that any other instrument does, but there isn't the kind of giant solo repertoire for it that there is for the piano or for the violin. And, people are hungry for interesting things they can do with their instrument, with their body, with whatever it is that they can do. And then I realized, of course, if you even think about what the word repertoire means, which is kind of meaningless for an improviser, it's infinite.
And how did you come to write a book, one of the first celebrated books on improvisation, when so many people would say, just do it? What can be said about it?
Yeah. Well, actually, I wrote Free Play because one of my mentors was Yehudi Menuhin, the violinist, and he said, hey, you should write a book about improvisation. And Yehudi was really saying you should write a book about musical improvisation But of course, as soon as I was 2 seconds into the project, I realized that what this is really about is the creative process for anyone, no matter what your instrument is, no matter what your medium is, no matter what your art form or craft is, and that we're all in this infinite territory of creativity and improvisation. And so that became free play. And then I'd say free play, which came out in 1990, was more about the inner and spiritual dimensions of the creative process. My new book, The Art of Is, which just came out last year, is more about the outer and social and ethical dimensions of the creative process. And, you know, what happens when people play with each other? What happens when they play against each other? What happens when they try to teach something that can't be taught? What happens when they come up against the questions of what is good for humanity and for the earth?
Yeah, I remember when I was writing my first book on the related topic, sudden music, you know.
Yeah, there's a great
It's very
book.
hard to get anyone to want to publish it because it was kind of about music, improvisation, life, everything. And I remember one publisher saying, yeah, you should write a book like this when you've had a lot of experience, when you're like a grown-up person. You should write about something very specific now. But now that I'm older and have like just a little experience of something, all I want to do is want to write in very specific, tiny, narrow things. Right. And then when I go back to this earlier book, I think like, boy, I really had the guts to say that. I had no idea what I was talking about, but I would like say these large things. And now I would be afraid. I would just say like, I know nothing, and go out there and do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you have to go out there and do it because nobody's going to give you permission.
And that's how you find amazing birds like the icterine warbler.
That's a beautiful instrument.
Yeah, this is called a duklar. It is half duduk, half clarinet, which means you can take off the scary duduk reeds and put on a clarinet mouthpiece. And it'd be a little easier to play if you're a clarinetist.
Well, today happens to be Beethoven's 250th birthday.
Wow.
And I think that everyone will agree that the music that we're playing here doesn't sound anything like Beethoven. But Beethoven was really the progenitor of the independent, self-employed musician. At least in Western culture, before Beethoven, musicians and other artists were all in the employ of the aristocracy or the clergy. And Beethoven was the one who said, okay, we are important as we are. And here we stand. And artists ever since then have done that. So we owe him a big debt of gratitude.
And he listened to birds. He learned from birds. Did. And he liked to break the rules, do what people said he couldn't do.
Yes.
And,
yes. And we're living at a time now when the aristocracy and the clergy are trying to take over again.
Mm-hmm. Beethoven would not stand for it.
He would not stand for it.
No, he would be protesting.
He would not stand for it. Beethoven lived at the beginning of European democracy. And, he'd certainly have a lot to say if he were here today. And it wouldn't be all about dressing up nice and going to Carnegie Hall. It would be about more profound things than that.
And I know the International Beethoven Year has been encouraging listening to nature and dawn chorus recordings and things like that. Like they're aware of that aspect of the master. And, and supposedly he traveled around and gave improvised concerts.
Yes.
Like crazy performances. He just get up there and play. And he did not see
he was first, when he first moved to Vienna, he was known as an improviser. Mm-hmm. And only later as a composer.
Yeah, and there was more tolerance in the classical music world then for improvisations somehow. Maybe it's back. Maybe it's returned.
Yeah. Well, of course, one of the things is we live in the world of Guido and Tom. So the two important dates in the history of Western music are 1015, when Guido of Arezzo invented music notation, and 1876, when Thomas Edison invented recording. And so in Beethoven's time, if you improvised something and you liked it and you wanted to play it again, you had to write it down. And this digital method of recording music, teaching music, transporting music over distances of space and time. I say digital because, on your keyboard type instrument, you're playing an A or a B flat. You're not playing in the cracks between them. This was the way to do it. And then after 1876, we have recording, which is really analog in nature, even if it's done today on digital devices. And it would have been really amazing if we lived on a planet where those two dates were reversed and where you could hear recordings. What did Mozart actually say to his starling, and what did the starling say to Mozart when they were sitting together in that study in Vienna?
I do feel like in the future we're going to get something like that. It's going to happen. People are going to be so fluid with the manipulation of sounds, cutting and pasting them together. Everyone will think about this. They'll make music directly out of sound.
Yeah.
Just as John Cage said we should do, but it will become more nuanced, more specific, more precise. People will develop a vocabulary for talking about it, and that will become better listeners rather than get tired of listening. We'll become very precise listeners to all this transformation of sound, the pitch down, the slowing, the speeding up. Everyone's going to know how to talk about this one day.
Exactly. I mean, I love, like, one of the common threads in your work and mine is this kind of fluid mixture of acoustic instruments and electronic sound, and putting birds into the computer and doing things with them, putting ordinary or ancient instruments into the computer and doing things with them. And it's great to have this ability in this time. If we don't wreck the planet, we're actually may find ourselves living in a golden age of culture where people are actually able to do things that they could only dream of before. All we need, of course, is this very simple thing of not wrecking the planet.
Yeah, and I guess naively, I've always believed that if you take the music of nature more seriously, it'll seep into one's sense of duty and responsibility for caring about the culture of the natural world all around us. But maybe it's just an easy delusion. I don't know.
Well, I think we have to hold on to that delusion and amplify it.
Right.
Because if we amplify it and a few more people begin to feel the sacredness of nature and the way that nature and culture combine and connect with each other, the better it is, because these kinds of transformations they're not going to happen by big, some giant message that comes down from the sky. These transformations really happen one person at a time. So anything that we can do to promote an awareness of the common cause of nature and culture and appreciating the creatures that we share the planet with is so important.
Yeah, I think we have to go out, listen to them, and hear there's some music they're up to that we can find a way to somehow join in with. We only are open to it. All right. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, David. It's been
Thanks
so much
everyone
fun.
for listening. We had a great time playing for you, and you've heard it live. And we're going to take these sounds we recorded here, and then there, and then we mix them and make it the best possible sonic thing out of what
And
we
then
played
it will
live.
reappear.
Yeah, you'll reappear. You can, if you listen again, it's going to be even more kind of alive and constructed. And so improvised or composed, you'll have to wonder.
Yeah. That is what it will be. And thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Ciao for now.
Ciao for now. All right. See you later. Thanks for joining us.